and welcome to the AACG Weekly Meetup. Today is Friday, February 12th, 2021, and our guest presenter is Charles Sable from the Henry Ford. And his topic is going to be Through a Different Lens, Studio Glass in a History Museum. We're going to be taking questions throughout the presentation and again at the end. Welcome, Charles.
Thanks, Ray. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Let's see if it works. Okay, share. Can you see, Ray, can you see it?
Yes, I can.
Oh, thank goodness. Okay, this is the part we were having trouble in practicing for this thing. I want to get rid of myself here. I don't know how to get rid of it. Hide thumbnail video. That's what I wanted. Okay, very good. Welcome, everybody. And I thank you for joining all of us today. What I'm going to talk about today is what a lot of you have seen in person, but you may or may not know the stories behind how we did what we did in the museum glass gallery, in the village glass gallery, as well as the thought process behind it, what we think about studio glass in a history museum like the Henry Ford. So I want to go through it with you, and if there's time at the end, I'll talk a little bit about the Bachmans. As you all know, most of our holdings come from Bruce and Ann Bachman, wonderful collectors from Chicago. As I was telling Ray in our practice session, this process took about close to 10 years from the time I first met the Bachmans in 2010 till the galleries opened in 2016 and 17. So it was a long and winding road to get where we got to, but that's maybe a topic for another conversation. If we'll see how much time we got. Also, I want to thank a few people in this group and slightly outside of this group who were instrumental in making our collection of studio glass possible. Probably the most important person, I'm going on order of importance, is Ferd Hampson. Without Ferd Hampson, this would never have happened. Ferd introduced me to Bruce and Ann Bachman. He thought their collection would be suitable for the Henry Ford. And since then, since probably 2009, he's been instrumental every step of the way. So I really owe him a great debt of gratitude, as well as the staff of Habitat. That's Aaron, who I know is here today, and Corey, and Debbie Clayson, all at Habitat Gallery. The other people I'd like to thank are Linda Green, who is here, who advised me constantly over the years and has become a good friend, and Mr. Bachman's assistant, who some of you may know. I bet a lot of you know her. Her name is Ginny Smith, and she kept Mr. Bachman in line, especially after Mrs. Bachman's death. So those are the people who pretty much made it happen. Of course, I made it happen too. It was my ideas that we are going to see here today, but those people are really instrumental. And Diane Farber, one last person who invited me to speak to you today out of the blue. So I was pleased. I wanted to do this talk at SOFA in 2016 and tried to, but unfortunately they scheduled, SOFA did, Lino right against me. So most of you haven't heard this talk. So I'm pleased to be able to present it to you because even I in 2016 did not want to give the talk. I wanted to go and see Lino. So one other thing, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and Ray will be relaying them to me, I hope, throughout this presentation. What do you say, Ray?
Yes, I will.
Okay, so let me get started with the beginning. This is the Henry Ford. This is what it looks like today, and I'm showing you several views of it. The Henry Ford Museum was originally known as the Edison Institute. Henry Ford created it in 1929 to honor his friend and mentor, Thomas Edison. In fact, our official title is the Edison Institute, doing business as the Henry Ford. And in the slides at the right, you're seeing just how big the place is, especially this lower slide, which was taken in 1934. The original building, the main building, is Independence Hall. It's a flipped backwards view of Independence Hall. The clock tower in Philadelphia is on the inside, and the architect Robert Derrick, who proposed the idea to Henry Ford, said, let's flip it and make this the centerpiece. All these buildings around it are all reproductions of buildings around Independence Hall in Philadelphia. And this area is what we call the promenade. So it's the sort of front-facing area. The museum itself, which houses all of Henry's collections of pretty much all sorts of things, horseless vehicles, railroads, cars, airplanes, household equipment, was scattered in lines throughout this area on the top here, which echoes the Ford Engineering Building, which is behind it. Actually, you can see it in this photograph down below here, which was built in 1923 by the famous architect Albert Kahn. So basically, Robert Derrick took this, what he called Machine Hall, and recreated it over here, which was originally over here. And that building is still there. That's the Ford Engineering Laboratory, again, still standing behind our building. So just to give you a sense of scale of the museum, it's a mile in circumference, right? This is the museum. So you're looking at the whole site plan here. So what I was just showing you is this section in here. And we have walkers in the wintertime who do the circumference of the museum to get their exercise in. Henry also wanted to create a historical village to show how life in pre-industrial times, which he admittedly got rid of, existed. And that's this. This is all of Greenfield Village over here. And it grew over Henry's lifetime and has since grown even more under our leadership. So it has houses of many of his heroes, his personal heroes, as well as the section that we're going to focus on today, the Liberty Craftworks District, where Henry showed traditional crafts. And one of the first crafts he brought in was the glass shop, which is right about here. There's a mill pond right here, for those of you who've been there. So that's where it is. And the glass gallery in Greenfield Village is right here that I'm pointing out. Now, the Henry Ford, as it has evolved over time, looks at American history through many different lenses. We have a series of core topics which emerged in Henry's time, but really officially emerged in the 1980s. And these core topics, core collecting topics and core exhibit topics are mobility, and by that we mean anything that moves. We collect it. Airplanes, cars. We don't do nautical history. That's the only thing that moves that we don't do, although we have plenty of nautical history in the collection. Agriculture and the environment, which is a topic Henry found very interesting. Design and making things. That's a huge topic that covers everything from domestic life right up through the crafts, studio glass, fine arts. We've got it all in the collection. Power and energy. We have machine engines, machine tools. Some of the first steam engines from England in the 18th century are in the gallery. So power and energy is really an important part of what we do as well. We have a separate curator for that. And also communications and information technology. Anything that helps people to communicate, from typewriters to computers, to cell phones, to old-fashioned telephones. You name it, we've got it. And then some. Because if Henry collected one of something, he collected a dozen. And if he collected a dozen of something, he brought it in the carloads. So our storage is quite incredible. Finally, and near and dear to Henry Ford's heart, was what we call society and social transformation. He was very interested in liberty and justice. He brought in the courthouse that Abraham Lincoln practiced in Illinois. It's right about here in Greenfield Village. He also brought slave cabins from a place called the Hermitage Plantation in South Carolina, which were near that. He also brought a house called the Dimaxin House, which is an African-American farmer from near his house in Georgia. And that's also in Greenfield Village. So he was interested in these kinds of things. And we have an exhibit on the floor, which I'll show you in a second, which deals with that. So here's our mission statement, which was created in the 1980s. The Henry Ford provides unique educational experiences based upon authentic objects, stories, and lives of Americans from America's traditions of ingenuity, resourcefulness, and innovation. Our purpose is to inspire people to learn from these traditions to help shape a better future. And that's what we do in everything. And you'll see how studio glass fits into that. The three key words in our mission statement are ingenuity, resourcefulness, and innovation. That's what we look at. And those of you who know Studio Glass know that Studio Glass is about innovation. It's about creativity. It's about resourcefulness. If you look at Harvey Littleton, for example, or Paul Stankard, or Laura Donifer, you will see that it is these people personify that. And that's sort of the lens that we look at in Studio Glass. But we also collect things like presidential limousine. This is the famous Kennedy limousine that's on display on the museum floor. In fact, we have a whole row of presidential limousines from Franklin Roosevelt's, which is right back behind here. This is actually Eisenhower's limousine, right up through what we call the Reagan car. It's actually created by Nixon and was used by President Reagan. We also have the famous assassination chair, Abraham Lincoln's chair, and that's a long story of how we got that. But it goes to these ideas of social innovation, social transformation. So we look at these things as in those lights. We also have things in the museum like the world's largest steam engine. This is called the Allegheny, dates to the 1930s. We have a whole section on railroads. We also have lots of cars. This is our current incarnation of our automobile exhibit called Driving America, which opened in 2012. And there are cars everywhere in here. And it's about America's love affair with automobiles. So it looks at a cultural history. And as part of that, we have this thing, which is Lamy's Diner. And that's a diner that you can, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to go that. That's a diner that you can actually eat in. It was created for the first incarnation. It was built in Massachusetts and originally worked as a working diner in Marlborough, Massachusetts, opened in 1946. And we acquired it in the 1980s. So in our latest incarnation of Driving America, we've made it an eat-in diner to get the experience with food from New England from the late 40s and 50s. Finally, two other major exhibits we've got. In the designing and making things, we have the only example of Buckminster Fuller's Dimaxin House, which you can actually walk in on. This is Buckminster Fuller, the great visionary theorist and designer, came up with this idea of using leftover airplane parts, airplane materials from World War II to create cheap consumer housing. Didn't happen, but it was a visionary approach. And finally, our most recent exhibit is Mathematica. And that talks about the world of numbers and beyond. It was created by the design team of Charles and Ray Eames, initially for the New York World's Fair in 1964, and then was several other versions of it were made. This version was sort of put together by the Eames office, which still exists. And it deals with how designers looked at exhibits and also what math is all about. And it's one of our most popular exhibits because it's all hands-on. Our exhibit staff basically put it all back together. It had been in storage for a number of decades. And I think it opened about 2015 or 2016, just before the glass galleries opened. It's really quite incredible. If you haven't been through it, you should. We're back to the main entrance to the museum. This is the Cornerstone, what we call the Cornerstone. And this was when the museum opened in 1929, Thomas Edison, which is what this video is about, laid the cornerstone and signed his name and stuck a shovel in here. So that really goes back to our roots of what the museum is about: innovation, ingenuity, and the exhibits radiate off of that. So Made in America is about the Industrial Revolution. This is with Liberty and Justice for All, which deals with the process of the evolution of liberty from the Revolutionary War right up through votes for women, including the Civil Rights Movement. This is Heroes of the Sky. So it's about airplanes and aircraft. And then over here is Driving America. Let me show you the floor plan. Here is the floor plan. So we were just right in here in the plaza, and we looked across this way through the museum. So as you can see, Driving America takes a huge chunk of the museum. Railroads, which is the only real part of the museum that still stands the way Henry had laid it out, just in lines and rows, because we can't move these locomotives. Heroes of the Sky, which has just gotten an upgrade. Liberty and Justice for All, which is one of our most popular exhibits over here. And then Made in America. This is the manufacturing section, the assembly line, and back up here are Henry's steam engines and locomotives. My exhibit, Fully Furnished, deals with furniture Your place in time is the history of the 20th century in American culture. And finally, we have agriculture over here and special exhibits back here. We also have a charter high school in the museum, and that's right back here. You see it says Henry Ford Academy. These are the 9th grade classrooms, and they work with us, the kids do, as well. The Modern Glass Gallery is right here. Now, I know bunches of you have been there, and that's why I'm pointing it out to you, so you get a sense just how big the museum is. We also have an exhibit on clocks and jewelry over here. These are very old exhibits. Modern glass took the place of silver and pewter, and I propose that we should do this because it fits into the Henry Ford's approach. Here is the entrance to the Modern Glass Gallery, which I'm sure many of you have seen. It's a wonderful piece. It's got Richard Royal's relationship series right in the front, right out of Mr. and Mrs. Bachman's bedroom, where this lived. And I put it out there specifically to attract people to say, what is that? What is it? And I hope that the label sort of brings them into the gallery. It wasn't an easy space to curate, but here it is. So you're just looking at the royal piece right here in the floor plan, and you walk through this corridor into what we call the promenade over here. And you start off over here on this wall on the right, which is the introduction. And here is the introduction. And it talks about studio glass, a blend of art, science, and technical innovation that embraces the notion of glass as a medium for creative expression in contrast to its use in industrial production. So this exhibit, this is what I call the big idea, is about how that blend evolved over three generations, from experimentation, i.e. Harvey Littleton, to the myriad range of artistic production we know today. So you start off looking at the right panel, and this is it. So I'm showing tools of glass blowers over here. This is a replica of the kiln at the Toledo workshops, and that's what the text panel talks about down here. These are artifacts of Harvey Littleton down here, including the vase, which is right over here. It's hard to see it in this photograph, that he created at the second Toledo workshop. One of his crucibles and glass cullets over here. So I explained who Harvey Littleton was, what he was trying to do in Toledo, and how he succeeded, how he and Labino, I should say, succeeded. And the next case, which is actually just right over here, shows the early evolution of studio glass. People like Michael and Francis Higgins up here that I got from the Bachmans, and then all this stuff, which I call blobs, are early examples of studio glass, several of which were made by Harvey and Dominic Labino. And most of these down here were made in our glass shop in Greenfield Village, which, remember, had been there since the 30s. For Dominic Labino, it was the closest working glass shop to Toledo. And we know that he came up to our glass shop and blew glass with our glass artists in the 60s and 70s. So there's a bunch of Labinos like this piece here, and a bunch of pieces by our glass blowers, which I was able to find, thank goodness, in our storage. So I'm talking about early studio glass here, the blobs, the experimentation. And what I also show in this case is outliers. Richard Wilson. Some of you have heard of Richard Wilson, others of you haven't. Richard Wilson broke into the Murano glass shops in the 50s. He was fortunate and had a very successful career on his own. I describe him as out of the mainstream. And the last two pieces are two pieces by Harvey Littleton, one of his rockers, and over here another one, and one of the Immersion series by Dominic Labino. These are from the Bachmans, just for your information. So that's how I introduce studio glass. This is what I like to describe as a deep dive into the history of studio glass. Next to it, so here's that Richard Wilson piece I was just showing you, is this. This came about through our education people who said to me, we've got this great hot shop up in the village, but it's closed during the winter time. We'd love to show the technical nature of glass blowing. So we, myself and the educators and the designers, came up with a video. Thank goodness for Josh Wojcik, who may or may not be here today. I know he's a member of AACG, who starred in this film. He and Andy Kupol, one of our glass artists, basically filmed the entire production from batching to annealing. And what we did here, thanks to the designers, was add this device called a spin browser. So if you're a little kid and you want to play with this and you want to see how it all turns out, you can turn this thing, and it's very, very durable. It's been there for almost 5 years now. and you can see the whole process of glass blowing. But if you want to watch it, it takes about 45 minutes. So I think it's quite wonderful to show how the process of glass blowing works. Now, you go across the aisle.
Excuse me, Charles.
Yes, sir.
There is a question. You wanted to know, when did the wing open?
When did the Modern Glass Gallery open?
Yes.
Fall of 2016, November to be specific. Okay, of 2016, we opened it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So across the way, I wanted to talk about really some unique characters in studio glass. And one of the most important of these from my method of thinking, who relates to our mission statement, is Paul Stankard. And fortunately, Paul Stankard had just done a video, an interview with CBS Sunday Morning. So that's what this thing is. It's Martha Teichner talking about his educational background, i.e. that he was dyslexic. People thought in the 1960s, when he was a young man, that he was stupid, and his family sent him to trade school in New Jersey. So what I did was, with Mr. Bachman's blessing, go out to Paul. In fact, Mr. Bachman made the introduction in, I think, 2015. And I bought some of early pieces by Paul Stankard. We had some of his early paperweights in the collection, as well as his mentors, Frank Whittemore, down here. One of them has the B in it, by the way, if you're a Stankard collector over here. And then some of his tools, some of the rods down here, and what Paul likes to call inclusions. That's this case right here, and one of his molds. And in the next section over, I talk about Paul's artistic development, because as most of you know, Paul Stankard strived not just to be a great paperweight artist, but the best, period, outdoing all the 19th century French and American paperweight artists, leading up to this wonderful, I think it's a triptych over here. His orbs over here too. I've got some of his very early orbs, a couple of his very early. This is a diptych from the Bachmans over here. So I mixed and matched it with pieces we bought and pieces we acquired from the Bachmans as well. So Paul Stankard stands a little bit outside of the history of studio glass, but he's also part of it too. So I wanted to talk about the unique contribution of Paul Stankard. Then we move ahead in studio glass history into what happens next. The influence of European, specifically Murano artists on American artists. The middle of this case here shows what was going on in Murano. I was able to acquire some pieces from a local collector of Murano glass that was made in the early 60s, right about the time that a lot of American artists were looking. People like Littleton, who tried to get in and was physically removed from the Murano workshops. Others, now Chihuly eventually broke through. Or people like Irwin Eisch, who was a good friend of Harvey Littleton's. This is a piece from the Bachman collection. And then, of course, ultimately, the influence of Europeans like Lino. And these are three great Lino pieces here, the Batman here. And while we were rehearsing this, Ray asked me, how can you see the little bat signal here? And we did something quite unusual in our installation. We bottom lit some of the pieces. So the Batman is not only lit from above, but also from below here. And you'll see that in the museum gallery. There are uplit pieces in the gallery. So here's a piece from Lino's from the early 80s, one of his goblets, and the Batman from the 90s, I think. And if you've got questions about names and dates, I can get them later. So we talk then about how these ideas come through, because of course, Chihuly met Lino in the late 60s, early 70s when he was in Venice. Now, he eventually spread these ideas at Pilchuck. So I'm going to move into the second section. So we've just been looking at this section and this section here down this long corridor. I'm going to talk now about these four cases in the middle, because this is the area I call studio glass emerges. You can see it up here, zone 4. And I talked about some of the students of Harvey Littleton, specifically Chihuly. Okay, two pieces that fit in the case, Marvin Lepofsky, Joel Philip Myers, who was not a student of Littleton's, but equally important, Fritz Driesbach, and David Huchthausen over here. And this is a case on Richard Marquis, who really took Venetian ideas and went crazy with them in his Marini, as you can see. So it's an explosion, is what you find really beginning in the 70s into the 90s. But these are the guys who are really doing it. So I talk about this. Remember, I'm doing this for the general public now. I want to grab them and bring them in, because they may look at the blobs and go, then they all come toward this section here. If you look back here, You're walking down this gallery here from the entrance. So you get sucked in with Rich Royal's piece over here, and you really get sucked in with this over here. Then we've got the side aisles here, this sort of cross axis over here, which is this. And this is what I call Studio Glass comes of age. And these are the great next generation of Studio Glass artists. People like John Kuhn over here, Benjamin Moore, Martin Blank, who's a little bit younger, I know, Richard Jolly. This is one of Jolly's great pieces over here. This was in the Bachman's bathroom, if you remember, okay? Or we've got some Tom Patties down here, Mark Pisers. The Bachmans had some great Mark Pisers. Michael Glancy, Eric Hilton, Howard Bentray, Tutzinski, Kiki Cribbs, Richard Ritter, and Kathleen Mulcahy. Wow, what a group. So it's like a roster of who's who. So then we go to the other side. Now I'm across the aisle, so let me back you up so you can see where I am. So we just looked at these two cases here. Now we're over here, looking toward the courtyard. And that's what these two cases are. So you've got William Morris, Karen Willenbrink Johnson, Dante Marione, Thurman Statham. Across the way, you've got Emily Brock, Dan Daly, Leah Wingfield, Laura Donifer, Ginny Ruffner, and Mary Schaefer. Wow. This was supposed to be a woman's case originally, and the bosses said, no, you can't do that. It's ghettoizing. So it's still wonderful. And if you're wondering, this piece is lit up from the bottom. So this is the all-night takeout that was in the Bachman's kitchen, by the way. And these are some great baskets that Laura did. If you're interested, I will be doing a segment on our TV show on this gallery coming up next fall sometime. They just filmed it. So we do a show on Saturday mornings called the Henry Ford's Innovation Nation. So I chose 3 artists in Studio Glass. Well, I talked about Studio Glass in general, and I chose 3 artists to talk about. So I'm talking about Emily, these 2 pieces, and these pieces of Laura's, and one by Hiroshi Yamano, who was made during our visiting artists program as well. So that'll be coming up next fall.
Excuse me, Charles.
Yes, sir.
Question came up. Is there a catalog or written material about this display, this wing of the museum?
I wish. We ran out of funding before that could happen. So there is no catalog of the Bachman collection. However, everything is online. If you go to the Henry Ford digital collections, you can type in an artist's name. Say you're interested in Laura Donifer. You can see all the wonderful Laura Donifer pieces, including Bachman bequest pieces that didn't get into the display. Okay? So that's my only consolation. I wanted to do a publication, but we just didn't have the funds to do it. And we can talk more about it at the end if there's time.
Another question, is the museum currently open?
Yes. Henry Ford Museum is open to limited capacity, 25%. And what you have to do to get in is arrange online. That's how it works in Michigan. I know the Detroit Institute of Arts works the same way. And they sell the tickets online, and then you bring the tickets in with you. And there are lots of safety protocols, but it is open. Good question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So then I move to the international Studio Glass case, which is a little arbitrary since people like Martin Rosso has been in this country since the 80s over here. But then there's this great Klaus Moye piece, which was in the Bachman's dining room, for those of you who remember it. A Boyadjiev piece. This is one of my favorites, the Shermini Orsakara. I believe she lives in Vancouver. Stefan Dam, Bin Fo, Higuchi. This is a Giles Bettison. One small Lubensky Brechtova, Seguso. This is a Gianni Toso piece, and I'm forgetting who this is. This is Hart, Noel Hart from Australia, Peter Hora, and a Bubaka over here. And this is one where Mr. Bachman has, it doesn't show up in this photograph, there's a little Dale Chihuly leading the Devil's Blowing Glass in here that Mr. Bachman commissioned. So that really is a quick view of our museum gallery. The last case, which is uniquely Henry Ford, you will never see anything like it in any other museum, is what I call the diffusion case, or Studio Glass for everyone. Now, the vast majority of our visitors are not Studio Glass collectors. This is all new to them and rather surprising. So what I tried to do, and I had a graduate student from the University of Michigan come in and work with us as an intern. We talked about the diffusion of Studio Glass into popular culture. So we treated it on different levels in this case. What we did was put photographs, that's this top line, of pieces in this gallery from the Bachman collection, and talked about inspired knockoffs that anybody could buy online. And we did. So you have this wonderful Labino piece here, or this Lino piece. I like the Driesbach here. Or the Marquis teapot. How about the rabbis, which are available from a place in Pompano Beach, Florida, called the Crystal Outlet. You can get these little rabbis. They're about 50 bucks each. Or a couple of Ritter's apples over here. Or this Chihuly ceiling panel. Or a Chihuly floppy bowl. Pretty cool. Along the sides here are studio glass pieces made in Murano, but they're not studio glass. They're mass produced. And then these are our production in our glass shop. Finally, mass produced studio glass over here. These are little paperweights. These are Australian goblets, and I'm forgetting the artist's name off the top of my head. It'll come back to me. Wine bottles, and then to the lowest of the low end, this is mass-produced Murano glass. And we left the price tags on them because they came from Marshalls and TJ Maxx. Okay, and these are Pier 1 imports. Or how about a piece that echoes the look of studio glass made in Mexico? These are Crate and Barrel. I don't know if I mentioned that already. So the idea is that studio glass is all around us. We just don't know it. Pretty cool. Questions?
There's none at the moment.
Okay. I was wondering if this thing would evoke questions. So you've got the gist. So this is where we go into real depth into studio glass at the Henry Ford with all this stuff. So you get a sense of how the movement has gone and where it is sort of come to. This is what Tina Oldnow calls the classic phase of studio glass, okay? Which really ends with people like Tim, who really is in what she would call the post-classic phase. I don't know if Tim would agree with that, but that's what Tina has said to me, okay? The classic phase, the really great stuff, the really wild stuff. And we're in a new phase now where it gets very, very fine arty, okay, if I can use that phrase. But I know I'm casting value judgments here. All right, on to the next exhibit of studio glass at Henry Ford. So we've just looked at the museum. We were right over here in the museum. We're going across the museum, and this is a huge distance, by the way, into Greenfield Village. So here's the entrance to Greenfield Village over here. You walk in, and this is Liberty Craft Works. So the weaving shop is here, pottery here, tin is over here, and glass is right here. This is where the glass gallery is located. I'm going to show it to you now. This is the glass shop. This has been here since 1931. It's supposed to be a replica of the Boston and Sandwich glass shop in Massachusetts. Not quite, but we do some incredible things in here. From early American glass to what I call diffusions of studio glass. I know many of you have been in here and have seen our glass artists at work. This is the building right next to it. So the glass shop is right over here. And we deliberately chose this building for the museum glass gallery. It was a machine shop built in 1888 in Lapeer, Michigan, and moved here by Henry Ford in the late 1920s, about 1930 or so. And it had lots of machine tools and equipment in there right up through World War II. And they were all taken out during the war and melted. And the building has been empty since. Used for a variety of different purposes, including food service, education, pottery shop used it. It was ripe for redevelopment. At Mr. Bachman's request, the museum hired the great architect, Jamie Carpenter, who many of you know, to come up with an idea for this thing. And the first thing he said to us was, you need an entrance. So he came up with this idea of a glassed-in sort of lantern, is what I like to call it, facing out of the Liberty Craftworks area as an entrance. And here you go. This is the whole view, inside view.
Excuse me, Charles.
Yes, sir.
Someone wants to know, does the village have shuttles to take you back and forth? You know, from the
Unfortunately
museum?
not. Now, please remember the village is closed during even in normal times. It's closed during the winter. It's open from April 15th through the end of November, and then it closes. It's open for holiday nights, and indeed during holiday nights, which is a special event around Christmas, only in the evenings, the glass gallery is open as basically a warming station, as a place to see wonderful glass. but it's not open now, unfortunately. So to answer your question, no, there are no shuttles that take you back and forth. I wish there were, because it is quite a hike. And what we tell people generally is that you should really think about 2 days. 1 day for the museum, because it's so much to see, and 1 day just for the village. That's generally the rule of thumb. It's just too much. Unless you're just dying for studio glass, then you can just make it into a day. But even when I've taken groups like ours through, it takes a while. Some of the habitat programs, that we do the village in the morning and the museum in the afternoon and have lunch in between. That's how big it is. Okay. So it's a lot to see. Good question. You're welcome. So this is what the Jamie's rendering for the glass gallery looked like back in 2016 or so. Cases that we designed. This is a mechanical room, but it's the original building. We took the boiler out of this room and it became part of the studio glass gallery. I call this the masterpiece gallery right in here. So the idea of the museum glass gallery is that it would show all of American glass history. Okay. And there's some great views of it. My favorite is this view on the lower right, because the place glows at night. It just shimmers out. But it really truly is quite striking to see this from about a block away. So the glass shop is over here, just to orient everybody. It's off to the right here. And there's that masterpiece gallery. I'll show you some details of that in a second. Here's what it looks like in the storytelling zones, as we like to say. You walk in here and there are two pieces, which I'll show you in a minute, which orient you to the space. Then you walk back through here. And you can really focus on any area that you're interested in. The blues are all studio glass. So anything blue is studio glass here. And so it takes up at least a third of the gallery, the studio glass. And the rest of it is early American glass, art glass over here, 20th century, mainstream glass over here, which I'll show you. This is the entry. And what I try to do for the general visitor is give them a sense of what you're going to see inside. So we put up on the wall over here a spun bottle, early 19th century, of which we have dozens of in the collection, and a Stephen Powell. Really quite incredible piece over here. I was looking for something that was a vessel form, and I wanted to, but I really wanted something very, very visually interesting. So that's how we settled upon that great piece. Then you walk right in to the glass gallery, and it is just white. The original building was this red brick, and Jamie came up with the idea of lighting it up. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This is my photograph taken about a week ago of the space on a cold winter day, very cold winter day. And what Jamie did, which was so exceptional in here, was to, first of all, paint the place white, as I've said, and then put 3 layers of illumination, because all of us know that glass needs light to shine. So he did recessed lighting up in the eaves here. You can all see it. Then he did spots shining on each of the cases. The tops of the cases are open. And these walls, by the way, were made by a place called Gunshall, a company called Gunshall in Baltimore. I am told the Imagine Museum used those cases. I have not seen them though, the same cases that we've got. They're also self-regulating. We don't have to clean them. There's motors in the bottom here. They're called positive pressure that moves air in and out. And so we've never dusted since 2017 when this opened. So these cases are quite wonderful with the lighting shining down here. And then there is lighting LEDs in the corner of all these cases. It's hard to see it because the text is in front of it. So each one deals with a theme. So this is glass in early America, pressed glass over here. It winds around back to studio glass. Now, most people are not going to be interested in early American glass, this stuff here, or the Victorian glass here. I deliberately put this at the central axis. So if we go back here, you can see Dale Chihuly's yellow chiffon right at the center. And there's the large Howard Ben tray and one of Leno's dinosaurs right over here. So I know what people are going to be interested in. So you guys are getting the dirt here, okay? Because they usually walk right through and say, wow. And the yellow Leno, by the way, this was in the Bachman's living room, for those of you who remember it there, okay? It really grabs people's attention. So how did we make this work? We have 10,000 pieces of glass at the Henry Ford, excluding studio glass. It is one of the largest collections of American glass, period. Basically what you've got is Corning Toledo, then us, okay? Winterthur comes a little bit further down and collecting. This is what our storerooms look like, okay? I know you're all going, oh my God. This is just one of our glass storage rooms, by the way. We have several more. So what you're seeing here is just some pretty wild stuff. More images. Irish glass here. Henry Ford had a penchant for Irish glass. Late 19th century Barber bottles here. More Irish glass here. Carnival glass. We have tons of carnival glass. So what to do with all this stuff and how to represent American glass? What we've done is something I call, and our designers call, the wall of many. We took just one of our great glass collections, our bottles and flasks, and lined them all up along the exterior wall. So it becomes an exercise in design here as well. Now, for the bottle and flask collectors, what we've done is put these on our website. So each one of them. So instead of putting a big label up here and saying bottle 1840 Boston and Sandwich Glass Company up here, we've done it on the website. Looking further into the glass gallery, I've laid out these cases. You can see them a little bit better here. In the early American glass, and they're double-sided cases for those of you who haven't been there, with a shield in between, so we can get a lot of pieces out. And I've laid them out by the pieces I think are most important in this sweet spot in the middle, lesser importance top and bottom. As you move ahead, we've got what I call the Showstopper case of art glass. Yes, this is a Tiffany daffodil lamp. Steuben floor lamp here, one of two that exist. The other's at Corning. Tiffany candelabrum. Hood ornaments. These are Lally hood ornaments. This is our most popular case by far in the historical section. Everybody focuses on this. And you all know what this is, right? Pyrex. Okay. Blanco glass up here. More Steuben up here. Really, let's get to the studio glass because that's what everybody wants to see. What I did with the two large, what we call hanging cases of studio glass, is to take pieces from Bachman and other collections, really big pieces, really dynamic pieces, really pieces that stand by themselves, and place them up here. I started with an early studio glass section over here, and that's what this case is. So you've got some Labinos. This is Harvey's earliest piece that he considered glass. The family calls it the football, and I got it from the Littleton family. A very early Chihuly, a Carlson up here. Yes, this is a John Kuhn over here. Ritter's over here, more Ritter's down here. Barry Sautner here, another Richard Wilson here, and a Micheluzzi over here. Very, very early Howard Bentray right here. It's one of his burial boxes. And I like to compare these two to the Chihuly, which is back over here. On the back side of this same case is Laura's great Hallelujah spring amulet basket that she made in our glass shop. Thank you, Laura. Japanese studio glass over here. I'm trying to make this quick. A Carol Cohen piece. I deliberately put this out here. Carol Cohen has not made a piece of glass, according to Mr. Bachman, since the early 1990s. It's an illusion of a teapot. And I did this for kids. Same thing with Alea Wingfield, Toots and Shirley, and this Greg I'm sorry, get blanking on his name, Callagher right here. Carrie Russell Poole over here. So you're getting the gist here of what I did. Quickly, the other cases, this case faces front and this is the back. So this faces the back wall. What you've got up here is this piece, and I did this for studio glass aficionados. You know these wonderful William Morris pieces, but most of you probably wouldn't guess that this is a Dan Daly. Okay, I'm playing the name game here as well. A couple of Shane Farrows here. One of the most interesting over-the-top pieces is this. It's hard to see it, but that's a Paul Stankard. It's his Ode to 9/11. Okay, Linda McNeil over here, Sybil Peretti here. I think this is a Steve Weinberg over here. Vernon Breccia over here, Bubacco over here. Okay, on the backside, Thomas Schoon, Kiki Cribbs, forgetting who's who, another Lepovsky, another Emily Brock. These are Jose Chartier's. This one did not come from the Bachmans, this Tudzinski, and a Bertil Valiant over here. So again, pieces that really hold their own visually. The last area, probably the best of it all, is the Masterpiece Gallery. You're seeing my photograph taken about a week ago of this space on a late winter day. And it deliberately lets the light in. It's really quite wonderful. This is what I call the Masterpiece Gallery. This is the designer's rendering. So we deliberately did this to maximize the number of pieces I could get out. This is a Lebensky Brechtova Cuban cube. Oops, that's what it looks like. That was my photograph for about a week ago. J. Musler Cityscape Bowl, which is over here. You've got Martin, I'll show you some better pictures. Martin Blank's Copper Sentinel over here. Here you go. This is better. Martin Blank's Copper Sentinel. One of the great late Harvey Littleton pieces, another Leposky, Dan Daly, Bubble Boy over here, Nicholas Africano, Poles and no, Jenny Pole, I'm sorry, I'm talking too fast here. You know who I'm talking about. Anyway, Sabrina Knowles and Jenny Pullman over here. And what else? And Ann Wolf right here, really great cast piece. And that's what the gallery looks like. So there's the Knowles and Pullman piece. These three are really three great Littleton Vogel pieces as well. And these are two Linos. Okay, this one, these two both used to live in the Bachman's living room. Okay, questions?
Oh, no? There's none at the moment.
Okay. And then one extraordinary piece. That's this one. John Kuhn's Petroglyphic Rock Series, which was donated to us by the Littletons. And it lives outside. Harvey, what the story I was told by Carol Shea, Harvey's oldest daughter, was that Harvey traded this piece for one of his to John Kuhn in 84, 85. When we got it, it was covered with bathtub caulk because it had been outside in the hills of North Carolina. So all of this here was Harvey tried to make it stand up. So our conservators got it, worked on it, and you can see them, here it was in conservation with our staff, trying to figure out how to make it work outside again. And what they did was they put it on this grate over here and mounted it outside the gallery. So it lives outside there when we are free of frost. Now it is back inside the gallery, and it lives in the gallery in the wintertime. It's really quite incredible.
Charles?
Question, yes.
So how many works came to you from the Bachman collection?
In the initial donation, there were 311. We've since received as bequests another 15 or so. Okay, so what are we up to? 320 something in that scope. 66% of which is on display, which Mr. Bachman was very pleased about. That never happens. We promised him between 20 and 40% would go on display. So we way exceeded that. And I'd like to see lots of it out, but that's not a possibility. No museum can do that. Okay, any other questions? No?
No.
Okay, so we've got an awful lot of the Bachman collection out. And speaking of the Bachmans, there's their house. And I just want to give you a few little bits, and I'm going to finish up here because we're running out of time. The Bachman house no longer is the Bachman house, unfortunately, and that's their living room. So that was what I first saw. I did not see this piece over here, but I saw everything else. The Shayna Lee, by the way, we have, and I would like to get it out. And we did not get this. This was reserved for the children. So is this and the crow. So those pieces we did not get. Question, yes.
How often do you rotate the pieces?
We don't, because we ran out of funding. That's another funding question. I would love to rotate the pieces. If anyone wants to offer us an endowment to do that, I'll be happy to talk to you. But it's not in the realm of possibilities at this moment that we can rotate. The idea was that masterpiece case in the village, the one I've just been showing to you, would rotate. But now we just can't do it. In fact, even the pieces I wanted to get out, this piece, which I want to put out in the village, we don't have the funds to do it. And there's a pair of Dan Daly sconces. For those of you who remember, they used to be in the Bachman's master bedroom. I'd also like to get those out too. So we have them, we just can't show them. Good question, excellent question, everybody. Here's another view of the living room. And you can see lots of the pieces. Look at how the Bachmans showed these pieces. You've seen most of these pieces in my slides. So we look at them a very different way. A curator looks at them. I'm looking at them as individual pieces and what stories they can tell us versus wonderful displays that the Bachmans have. There you go. So there's the Batman image, and there's the Dan Daly. This one's in the masterpiece case. bunch of these Pisers are out. This is out in the museum. So is this. You can see them all. There's the master bedroom. Richard Royal right here, the one I showed you in the museum. The Chihuly, also in the museum. And this one ended up in the village. 3 outstanding pieces that the Bachmans had. And another group of pieces. And I think pretty much almost everything I'm showing you is on display. The Eric Hilton's out, the one on the top here is out in the village. So is the Kiki Cribs. The Dan Daly Absurdist is out. The Carlson's out. This is the Leah Wingfield over here. And here's the Hilton down here. In what the Bachmans call the gallery space. And I think that's what I've got for you. Any other questions?
Yeah, Charles, is there some endowment specifically for the glass?
No. And that is a point that I'd like to address with this group. Mr. Bachman offered the collection to us as a collection. And by that, I mean there were no funds attached to it. So how it worked was we felt, the administration felt in the Henry Ford Museum that this Bachman collection was extraordinary and that we should pursue it. So what we did was we basically fundraised. So everything you've seen came from another donor. So the gallery name, if you've noticed, is the Davidson Gerson Gallery of Glass. The Davidson Foundation in Michigan is based upon funds that were developed by a company called Guardian Glass. Guardian Glass made automobile glass and was recently sold to the Koch brothers. They funded it. They have a large foundation. We were able to get them to fund the building. Mr. Bachman didn't give us a dime. All he gave us was the collection, okay? And that was something that was attempted at, but really goes to the point where if you really would like your collection to be displayed, to be published, to be cared for, it's incumbent upon a collector to think about that in endowment, funding, working with the museum. So we accepted this, it was a rare situation. Bachmans had shopped this collection around to lots of other museums before we took it. And that was the sticking point with many of the museums, that it did not come with any funds. So really important. However, for us, it was worth it. And we were able, because we were so large, that we were able to go after funding, outside funding for it. Very, very, very good question. Okay. But that's what museums do. Museums do not have pots of money to throw around. Most of us are nonprofits. Not everybody, but most of us, which means we operate on very, very slim margins. Basically, what we get from facility rentals, admissions, programs, that's about it. So, and the Henry Ford does quite well. And indeed, when the Bachmans approached us, and I know I'm running out of time, they had a number of stipulations for donating their collection. One is that the museum had to be in a Midwestern urban center, large urban center, have very high attendance, and most importantly, be financially solvent, with all of which we fall into. So that were their criteria. They also loved the hot shop. That for them was was the icing on the cake for us. So does that answer your questions?
Yeah, there's a couple more.
Okay.
One is, what's the long-term outlook for glass, at the Henry Ford?
We are adding to the collection. We have restricted funds for acquisitions, as well as the artist in residence program. Every summer, we bring in 4 artists to the museum to blow glass in Greenfield Village, and each one of them is required as part of their residency to donate a piece to us. So we've got some Giles Bettisons, we've got Hiroshi pieces. I'm looking for artists who the Bachmans described as not emerged yet. That's what Mrs. Bachman said to me years and years and years ago. We only collect emerged artists. I'm looking for younger artists, people who the Bachmans didn't collect. So obviously we didn't get to do that this year, but we've had quite a number of people. In fact, what we're going to do, hopefully this year or next, is put up a new case of artist in residency pieces in the museum glass gallery. So those then become part of the collection. It's really quite wonderful. And I've acquired pieces here and there. Last time there was a sofa. At the auction at the Habitat Gallery, I bought a Labino decanter set because it fits in with our collection. So we are still looking to add pieces to the collection. It's not a static collection. It is an actively growing collection. Cool.
Also, as far as the endowment is concerned, there's a couple of questions. It's twofold. What size endowment does it take to have a collection like you have at the Henry Ford? And secondly, if someone was to make a donation, what would a meaningful donation be?
That depends on the institution. There's no one size fits all there. Okay. What we asked for building out the museum gallery and the village gallery was was well into the millions. Okay. It was between 5 and 10 million. Okay. To do what you saw. Okay. From the Davidson Foundation. It really depends on the museum. It really depends on the size of the collection. Like I said, there is no one size fits all.
Okay.
And that is negotiated between the donor and the museum.
Okay.
For example, when the Heinemann collection came into Corning, everyone knows the Heinemann collection. That came with a multi-million-dollar endowment. I don't know how much. I know it did come with that. That's how Tina did the Voices of Contemporary Glass, did the installation, and that also cares for that collection. Okay, that's a good example. Cool. Great questions, everyone.
I don't see any other questions at the moment.
All right, we're just about out of time, so.
Do you have a drink and decanter set yet?
Do we have a what?
A drink and decanter set.
Well, I got the Labino decanter set last year, or whatever it was.
That was my
2019.
question. I want to know if you had a drink out of it yet.
Oh, have I had a drink out of it?
Oh.
I can't. Aaron, I can't do that. That's considered a conflict of interest.
I know you didn't do it. Wink,
missed
wink,
it,
say no
Aaron.
more.
Charles,
Good question. Yes, whoever that is, go ahead.
it's Howard. Are you planning to do any video or public advertisement or whatever about the glass collection anytime soon?
If there's what I mentioned with this TV show, we will be doing, but that's about it. Other than artist in residency, okay. It is a wonderful and integral part of our collection, and I consider it, I think I said that in the announcement, the capstone of our very large glass collection at the Henry Ford, which is one of our biggest collections. So to answer your question, nothing specific at the moment other than the TV show, but every chance I get to talk about it like this, I will, because I think it's really important. It's right up there with the big collections. Flint has a wonderful collection, the glass collection that the Habitat people got there. Thank you. And in Toledo, of course. And there are lots of them all over the place. So I suppose that answered your question, sort of, but that's the best I can give you.
Oh, it does.
I have a question, Charles. What has been the public response to the glass exhibitions, especially in relationship to the other more historical exhibits?
People like it. It really livens up the place. It's been popular. The Museum Glass Gallery especially has been very popular, especially with educators. We created a curriculum, the education people did, of studio glass in middle school. Basically, they make their own studio glass with, I forget how they do it, with water and sugar and food coloring. Okay. And it shows the kids how studio glass could work. It's really quite wonderful. They also do it in science curriculums too, talking about the nature of glass. And I really can't speak to it in great detail, but that's what we've done. So educators bring classes in to the Museum Glass Gallery, especially during the wintertime. Of course, they all love the hot shop in the village, and then they come in to cool off in the glass gallery. I'm being sarcastic, but it's fun. So we do get a lot of people. It's most popular, the Village Glass Gallery, during holiday nights. They set up a jazz band in there and people have drinks in there. We were lucky the way it worked out that we can do that. So you can actually have food in there because everything's in cases. It's great. Good question. So it's been popular is what I'm trying to say. It's been an added incentive for people to come to the museum, especially when the artists in residence are there. We make a big pitch for that. Our social media people do in the summertime. And depending on who it is. Laura's been there a few times. She can talk to that. if she's here. Oh, I guess you
want me to
can't.
say?
Huh?
You want me to talk about blowing glass there?
Yeah, you've done it a
It's-
couple of times.
Yeah, I love it. It's everybody's really supportive. It's got a great facility, and Josh is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
I was supposed to go back when COVID hit. That was one of the many places that canceled their program. It's a spectacular place, and it's so much fun to go to the museum. As you know, Charles, I've been hounding that place, and the
Yes.
cars. I love the cars and the trains and the glass. I recommend everybody go when.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the glass. The glass to me is the icing on the cake. It's so much else in that place,
Yeah,
and it's so big. I mean,
it's
we're
huge.
the next museum in terms of scale is Smithsonian American History in Washington. Okay, but they don't do studio glass. You have to go to the Renwick Gallery for that in Washington. So we do it.
You just can't swear or say bad things when you're blowing glass. We learned that, didn't we, Charles?
Yes, we learned the hard way. Yes, we have family audiences. So it went up another silo and came down to me, Laura. Ay,
Sorry, I apologize.
it was fun. So other questions? Otherwise, I'll let you all go. Because I think we're out of time. Oh yeah, we're over time. Sorry.
Well, Charles, thank you very much.
It
Great
was my
presentation.
pleasure. Anyone have any questions? You can reach me at my email, which is just my name, Charles, 2 S's, at thehenryford.org. Okay, so Charles S. at thehenryford.org. Very good.
Thank